hold on. And for some strange reason, I'm not able to, you know, is the music loud enough? Or is, or maybe it's too loud anyway. Maybe it's too loud and I might as well just go on without the
Yeah,
music.
the game audio is kind of loud.
Yeah. So anyway, I hope the actual sound effects aren't too loud this time. Also, I can't believe I once again forgot to turn off my auto virus. But whatever the case, I guess you can continue.
So, Piotras, an owner of the Amisoft Pirate. Oh, wait, I think you already read that one.
Yes.
Because I just saw that nightmare word again. Oh, right, I was at, does this boss have the guy's likeness? Yeah. And he fell from his chair. Did he, like, seriously, like, call up the guy and tell him, wow, it looks so much like me, I fell off from my chair? Were the factors of releasing the PC port of Franko, the popularity of the Amiga game, publisher pressures, or something else? Just the popularity of the Amiga game. Keep in mind that as a team we had nothing to do with the PC port, hence the port differs unfavorably to the Amiga original. Did the uncut version of Franco survive? Alas, I don't know about that. I'd have to check it out myself, which is impossible as I now live a couple of kilometers away from home. I don't think that's as far as you think it is, Mr. Graphics Guy. I'm gonna look at the scale of kilometers. Let's see. Kilometer. A metric unit of measurement equal to 1,000 meters, approximately 0.62 miles. So, let's see. A couple. So, he lives about under 2 miles away from home, according to his own, what he says.
Druga próba wejścia.
Dude, get some exercise. It's good for you. I'm sure the discs are still there, waiting for me at that 2-kilometer journey. Were you popular on the street? Do the people recognize you? Sure, mainly those who knew who we were. Video game development is not a show business, at least back then, where people sell their faces and everyone would recognize us on the streets. We had that comfort that remained anonymous even when contacting people very interested into the video game industry. We were recognizable whenever we felt like it. It doesn't mean, however, that we weren't recognized through third parties. This guy told this guy I knew. I had cases where a girl from a nearby area that I didn't even knew tried to hit on me with a line like, "You'll show me your game." I'm pretty sure you're making this up. I don't think Franco is what I would call romantic. Hey baby, do you want to go in my room and flash me?
Is Fusion still there, by the way?
I'm here.
Yeah, so anyway.
He was just a kilometer away from his microphone.
No, a couple kilometers. Get it right. A couple kilometers away instead of an Amiga, okay?
And my Amiga gave me a restraining order of 5 kilometers after I sat on it.
It's a really sad day.
And from what my life was telling me, a game was at least of the woman's was the least of the woman's interest. Gee, I wonder why. You know what my fetish is? Flashers bleeding out the mouth when they get punched in the face. One other time in the middle of the city, a stranger lends a hand to me and says he knows me, and I did games. And that was 8 years since Domon came out. So yeah, there are cases of conscious contacts with the people that knew. However, fame had an other, more subtle dimension. It was the Franco character that got famous, not us. Yeah, he was the one that was made for Mugen, not me. A number of times, whenever in a bus, or in a shop, or on the street, I've overheard people talking about the game, not knowing that its developer is right nearby them. They had to load before seeing him. I can even name a number of funny stories. One day I went to a game store and asked the clerk if there are any exciting new releases, and he said, "You should play Target like this guy on stream is right now." The guy said that there's this great Franco game, and he proudly proclaimed that he even knows of the developers of this game, not knowing that he was talking to one of them. That is kind of depressing to hear. I know the developers of the game except for you. A number of times I witnessed a number of times people buying the game, and in some store not realizing that they could have gotten an autograph because the developer was standing right behind them in a foyer. There were kids mimicking Franco. That's not flattering, that's concerning.
Well, there were already plenty of kids that were into stuff like they shouldn't be into, like Mortal Kombat and stuff. So
The
yeah.
thing is, I'm just now imagining, like, kids on a playground doing stuff like flashing. And spraying RoboCop 3 and fuck all over walls.
At CNC Music Factory.
And constantly saying fuck off after they push people. And all kind of stuff. Even many years later, I've overheard people saying stuff like, "Did you know that a level in Franco was based on this place?" and stuff. I'm having trouble thinking Franco had that much of an impact.
Well, maybe when I would, I don't know. So I walk around on my city once more. Maybe I would actually like stumble on a Franco fan or something.
You just see kids doing the Franco impressions. One of them flashes you and you never go outside again. Personal interaction is what gives into a person that whatever one created has made an impact in people. And that's to say nothing of various articles in press, or even the game being displayed on television. No worries though, I'm sure soda water didn't hit our heads. Soda water, that's a strange substance to get drunk off of. This is the 4Kids interview. Now I get it. What were you spending money earned through the game for? I'd rather not go too wild with the earned money. There was 3 of us, and there wasn't much money to go wild. The cash was mostly for computers and hardware for them, like hard drives, extra memory, extra Amigas because the ones we broke by sitting on them, etc. With what program did you do the graphics for Franco, Domon, and Street Hassle? I love how with every interview they introduce a new game. Deluxe Paint 4 out of 5 at the time.
Well,
it was a program.
Well, Deluxe Paint, either version 4 or version 5. Like,
Oh, it's not a fraction equation, okay.
yeah.
After Franco came Street Hassle. The game was supposed to try out a number of things. What were these things, and what caused the game to be released? I'm not sure what the game was supposed to serve as testing waters for, aside of maybe the code. Street Hassle was a joke, and at the same time to the ZX Spectrum by Beam Software. The game wasn't supposed to be released at all. If Mirage saw this game, they proposed themselves for the game to be released. Incidentally, in 1993, there was a public presentation of this game in autumn part in Poznan. Poznan. We saw the public reception of the game, and we went, why not? All of that was before Franko got released. Have you seen the Doman comic? Okay, that's something I need to see. No, never seen the comic, and I've never read...
Ksasevsky, well... But
Yeah, that. An Ancient Tale. That title was completely incidental. Basically our version of Conan. Was Doman censored like Franko? Yes. The entire level with the hanged men had to be redrawn out of publisher pressure? Okay, now I really want to look into that Doman comic. Initially, the folks were hung on crosses. Okay. Franko makes a cameo in one of the cutscenes in Doman. What caused you to include him in the game? A simple joke. Hope you liked it. Why do corpses disappear in Doman, yet they don't in Franko? I know my games. It was like that, I think it is. I know what things infuriate people. If I had any lasting say, I would make sure the defeating enemies in Doman remain on stage. Unfortunately, hardware limitations had the upper hand. I have to say that the graphics in Franko and Doman were not rendered with tiles, like it was common with games at the time. You know, that kind of explains the loading a bit.
Yep. The backgrounds were basically one big image.
Yep, and the sprites, one big image. They basically like drew a bunch of stuff and put it all together like in Mugen, but that doesn't work with like regular programming.
Certainly not in programming of the times where you had to work with really limited memory constraints.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad this interview actually enlightened me on something. More like the entire levels were one big bitmap. Bitmap? I'm not even a programmer or a computer expert, and I'm already going into cardiac arrest. We didn't go for the 16 by 16 or 32 by 32 tiles, because while that would save on disk and system memory, doing so would be tedious and wasn't suitable for a beat-em-up. It's not your method is not suitable for anything! Like, not even a JPEG, a bitmap. What do you think the file size for, like, the graphics file of that game were? I'm glad the sound guy knows how to compress, but not the graphics guy, obviously.
Well, maybe the programmer guy would try to explain some things on that front.
I hope his explanation was, I almost got an embolism from what I've been given. And I wanted to avoid the issue of the environment being repetitive. Our approach brought out memory issues. You think?
No wonder. No wonder.
I love how the graphics guy is the most enlightening so far. There couldn't be corpses staying on the level because there wouldn't be memory for more enemies. Keep in mind, the game had to run on 1 megabyte of memory, so that's why I used fucking bitmaps for the level maps. The difference between Franko and Doman is that, different engine aside, Franko worked in 16 colors, while Doman worked in 32. My skin itches. Now, it would be unthinkable to work with these palettes. Back then, it was quite a... Like in Mugen, don't I only get 64 colors? It is thinkable. It's more like it is unthinkable to have giant bitmaps being rendered. I can't believe I'm so outraged with an honest answer, but this is just crazy. Now, it would be unthinkable to work with these palettes. Back then, it was quite a common problem. Not to mention that Domon allows two-player co-op, which eats up the memory even more. Oh,
By the fact that, well, sprites for two-player characters have to be loaded, so yeah.
I'm just two-player characters that are big bitmaps on a big bitmap background fighting other bitmaps. The math is eating my brain.
Well, just keep in mind, it's all running on 1 megabyte of memory, so you don't have to worry that much.
No, the megabyte has to worry. Which eats up memory even more. Hence, on 1 megabyte, both of the players' characters use the same sprites. I'm glad you're thinking of the wrong kind of memory-saving shortcuts. Game development in these times was a constant stream of compromises between the designer's ambition and the abilities of the programmer and hardware. And it doesn't help when you take your graphical approaches the way you do. Objectively speaking, I'm nonetheless impressed how the programmer was able to get an upper hand against the issues the hardware was giving us. Yeah, I have to say I'm pretty impressed that they were able to make the game run. I had to compromise a lot of times, the programmer less. Couldn't one of those compromises be like, tile your goddamn sprites? Whose idea was to add in the secret AK-47 weapon for Domon? I don't know, but it was a programmer's. In a sense that in my plan, there was supposed to be a crossbow in this game. One day, we hang around and the programmer was showing me a joke version of the game where Domon was brandishing a silly rifle sprite rather than the crossbow. I seized on so much that I drew the animation frames with the AK-47, and thus it ended up in the released game. I think doing that was quite fun. If someone would discover that cheat, one would beat the entire game shooting down previously aggressive opponents back to hell. Tell me more about Franko 2. What were the initial plans and what was left of them? Initial ideas was that of a game of like it hasn't been done before. Interestingly, so many years passed, yet as of 2007, there was nothing that came close to anything like it. We thought about two concepts, one of which was a traditional beat-em-up that scrolled in one direction. The other one, that ultimately won, was to have limited scrolling. The entire game would have been set on small backgrounds and their scrolling would have been partial. Something like that was done by 1987's Renegade. That game was supposed to be a variation on the beat-em-up. In plans, a lot of things could have been done. It was to be one of the few, if not only, 2D games where a single character would have at least 100 frames of animation. You mean only games at the time, right? Because I would like to show you, like, late SNK Playmore. Or, like, late 90s to 2002 Capcom.
Or
Or
any
I was-
of the modern and 3D fighters that ever come out nowadays.
Or how about Shaq Fu? Like, if there's one thing that game had, it was animation.
Yeah, and maybe either he may either he may haven't heard about Shaq Fu, or maybe because all he has ever heard might be the Amiga port of Shaq Fu, which by the way has to cut some frames of animations in order to fit in. And by the way, the Amiga port of Shaq Fu was done the same guys who also did the Amiga ports of the first two Mortal Kombat games.
I'm just stunned that there was an Amiga port of Shaq Fu. There would have been 4 playable characters, Franko obviously being one of them. Every character would have one's own fighting style. One of the characters was even limping, which was intentional given the character's backstory. He got danger status in Resident Evil, I hope is what the backstory would be. The weapons would come further into the mix, from shotguns, swords, pipes, Molotov cocktails to a chainsaw. This is not Grand Theft Auto, I swear. Loads of interactive scenes preceding in-game events. There would have been lots of interactive movies, like smashing an opponent's head on the car hood, shoving one inside through the window, or shoving opponent to a trash can and smacking the head with a lid, etc.
Basically, sounds a bit like the Shank games in a way.
I was gonna say, this sounds more like some kind of backyard wrestling thing. Plus dismemberment and loads of blood. Okay, not backyard wrestling then.
Basically, a bit like Shank in a way.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Shank now. Of course, the entire game wouldn't have the character of utter silly mayhem, but everything would be adequate to ongoing events. Character animations were based on real figures that I shot with the camera, then I drew sprites on top of them, like how some animated movies were made. Well, more like mannequin, but okay. There would be hundreds of types of enemies, punks, cops, gangsters, etc. The game would have been released on CD, and the target model, as far as I remember, would have been the Amiga 1200. Due to the size of the game, we didn't even think about the floppy disk version. I assure you that if the game came out and had everything what I wanted it to have, it would be revolutionary. Yeah, that game does sound awfully ahead of its time.
Very.
Hold on.
At least ever since the interview came out, eventually they came some games that would eventually try to do what the graphician was hoping to do with Franko, to like the aforementioned Shank games, and maybe I'd guess maybe even some of the Vanillaware games would sort of fit in the mold in a way. Are you guys still there?
I'm still here.
What happened to Arpa?
He said he had to be right back.
Ah. So anyway, while I will be waiting for Arpa to come back, this is Target, and as far as I know, this is basically the first polished first-person shooter released for the PC. In it, you are basically like a mercenary doing some missions for the hire. In fact, at the beginning of the game, you pick between 3 characters to choose on, which had different starting stats, like strength, which determines what kind of weapons you can carry, and how fast you can run, and other kinds of stuff, and as well.
I'm back.
okay, you can. Well, before you continue, based on what you've seen of previous news stream, uh, before we would go on with the interview, Arpa, how about I guess introducing Target to Fusion based on everything you've seen on the previous stream.
So Target is like they tried to have like RPG elements in a Duke Nukem 3D kind of shooter, except like it becomes some surrealist nightmare where you have a contact that gives you missions while staring at a flashing table. And then let's see. Also, there's cheap hits abound, and these cheap hits are not like exactly soft on your HP.
Yeah, especially on the higher difficulty level.
Yeah, this game is more suspenseful than it should be. Right now,
Sounds fun.
the nun's exhibiting his tank build, which is probably essential given how often this game likes to kill you with 1,000 cuts. And let's see, anything else particular that I remember about this game? Oh, the weapon economy is very generous. What was it, like $5 for a military grenade?
Also, the weapon loadout system is rather weird. That even if you have any, if there are few ammo types used by different different weapons, and even if you have the full loadout, if you want to gather your loadout, you may have to sometimes free the space for a gun you want to pick up just to be able to scavenge more ammo.
Speaking of loadouts, while the nun was talking, you noticed he threw away the chain gun. The chain gun actually sucks in this game, believe it or not.
It eats up a lot of ammo, huh?
It eats up a lot of ammo, and the ammo is almost never there. So, basically, chain gun, usually like the go-to weapon in any first-person or any shooter that has a chain gun. Not exactly what it could have been, just because you can never really use it.
Sounds like something to base an entire run around, huh?
Here is my chain gun run where I can only kill like 3 enemies ever.
Sounds good, get to it.
Yeah, the chain gun apparently takes the role of flamethrower in most other shooters.
And by the way, actual flamethrower exists in this game as well.
Oh yeah, they're a weapon of those astronauts people. Yeah, the enemies are really varied, as you've noticed. All kinds of people. We have regular people. We have women with guns for no reason. We have astronauts. And sometimes you even have yourself because the splash damage collision is unpredictable.
I can tell that those enemy types are quite varied. Now, so many of them that have a gun and stand there.
Pretty soon he's
Stand
gonna
there with
open.
a... go
sorry.
on.
Pretty soon he's gonna open the monster closet, but instead of like Caco demons and stuff, it's just gonna be people in red shirts.
Oh, so for the people from Star Trek then, except with real guns.
Yes,
These animations.
it's red shirts that kill you instead of get killed.
These
Oh, so they're from the mirror universe then.
and by the way, these animations.
Yeah, the animations in this game are really awkward.
And by the way, yes, there's literally a set called accuracy, which basically determines how good your auto aiming is. I had the I had cranked up the accuracy quite a bit, and you can see how generous the auto aiming is.
Contrary to what you would think on initial glance, it is probably the most broken stat in the game. Jesusilla and I even theorized that if you can get your accuracy to a certain point, you might even be able to shoot targets from another mission. Oh, and we also have weird walking, which has been going on for a while because I'm even able to sing it right now, given my latency.
And there was the monster closet.
The monster closet of a guy doing the chicken dance.
And yeah, there are also guys brandishing the rocket launcher, which can kill you in few hits. If
I
not, if
don't know why there are people in Poland just casually walking around with rocket launchers, but I can't really question it when I can't even pronounce these enemies' names, probably. I do like that the rocket launcher ammo is more plentiful than the freaking chain gun ammo. So, do you think that's like all the mechanics recap?
well, let me just see. Let me just try to think of something else. Oh yeah, the combat isn't exactly the most. Oh yeah, at least when it comes to the cooler things this game does, the medkits. The game has sort of Quake 2-esque inventory system, which also involves portable medkits, so you can collect medkits so you can heal it later for the later use. And by the way, the combat itself is not exactly the most fair. The enemies were really reactive, well, not in this case, but and apparently the enemies don't seem to have like much of the pain animation of sorts, so when they have no stun animation and with how reactive they are, chances are they would probably hit you before you can get to even kill them.
So
Yeah,
that's how every encounter in the game starts, with you taking damage.
Yeah.
Like I said, this game is designed around killing you with the death of 1,000 cuts.
And
Death of 1,000 bullets, more like.
Who knows, there might be a crowbar guy, because I think that's the melee weapon of this game.
hold on, let me just. Yeah, here's the crowbar, by the way, which I had to actually drop one of my weapons before I could even use it. For some reason.
You see that Gordon Freeman's a nobody. He's not dealing with the really harsh and unfair streets of Poland. You might notice that he has a lot of reserve medkit on him, but he's gonna go through that soon enough.
Yeah.
Alright, so where were you in the interview?
Alright, let's continue with the interview.
One more mechanic thing though, this is the easiest game to pacifist run because you can skip all the missions.
Yep. You can actually, from the quest giver, you can actually decline the mission, which basically goes to, basically has him go to the next mission.
Well,
And
that's
with that-
exploitable for speed runs.
Who can go through the menus the fastest?
Although I wonder if the game would have like a special ending if one would complete all of the missions or something.
You have cleared all the missions at Target. Congratulations, you are fags. Are there any chances that Franco 2 would ever come out? I don't know, maybe one day. I know that some time ago Mirage attempted to take steps on releasing the sequel to the PC, or at least how I'd found out through their website. When I called them, it turns out they were doing a survey on the interest for the sequel. Whatever the case, Mirage's project didn't have a lot in common with us. Someone simply tried to bank in on name recognition, which would have probably resulted in some crap that simply cashes in on the name. So is this Mirage or is this Electronic Arts? As you know, in 2003, there was a Franco 2 in development subtitled No Mercy. It was to be kind of an expanded version of the Amiga Franco 2 targeted for the Game Boy Advance, and I was involved with the project. I'm just stunned that they were thinking of putting it on the Game Boy Advance.
Except, well, you were about to read that later. Soon.
And I was involved with the project. I'd have to say that we had a different programmer for this project. Adam Goinski?
Hold on, let me just check out. Adam Goinski.
Okay, closer than I thought. We had the base engine and a mock-up of the first level ready. We were doing a demo version of the first level for the US publisher. Alas, after talks with the publisher, it turned out there was no way the game would be released on the Nintendo platform, because on the license agreement, the Japanese company has stated that the Nintendo platform games should not be violent. Excuse me? Mortal Kombat Advance, Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance, Mortal Kombat Tournament Edition, Doom even though the blood was green, Doom 2 even though the blood was green.
Didn't the Dementium came out in Nintendo DS?
Yeah, there are a lot of like violent games on Nintendo platforms, so I have no idea why Nintendo was screwing around with them. Maybe they just didn't want to admit that this game was going to be a disaster. Like, even on the Game Boy Advance, there were M-rated games. And thus the entire platform hit a snag. Quite a shame, as the GBA platform had a good potential for 2D game development that could only be dreamt of earlier in the Amiga years. Because of Nintendo's stupid and self-contradictory policy, we were not able to finish the project, as it was not worth going further. On the other hand, it was a bit of our fault because we should have known before starting development that Nintendo is a bit childish of a company. No, it's not. Like, yeah, they have a lot of family games, but it doesn't stop the third parties. Unfortunately, we didn't had any time or motivation to do something charitable.
Or like something like, well, or maybe just, well, if you have no chance for the publisher, it's hard to expect some people to like do it for free or something like that, but yeah.
Trying to figure out if it's his fault or Nintendo's being self-contradictory. Because it's like, yeah, Franco's not okay, but we can have 3 Mortal Kombat games.
And, well, although, yeah, never mind.
What happened to the other works, like Kajko and
Hold on. Kaiko and Kokos.
Was Coco's that game with the turkey?
Yeah, and by the way, the name actually is Kaiko and Kokos, like, together or something. I've just translated.
I was thinking of Morhun. My apologies.
No.
Coco's. I know I heard that before.
Kaiko and Kokos actually is basically like some kind of police comic book that eventually would get a police Amiga adventure game made out of it, but yeah.
Hmm. Anyway, after that episode of Deja Vu, Kaiko and Coco's was also supposed to be a beat 'em up, except it's obviously based on
Janus Krista.
Janus Krista. I should have known Janus because I've read a name like that before. Cult comic series. I was doing that project in meantime. I remember that graphics-wise, I only had one level ready. Background, intro, the protagonist sprites, and a number of bandits. I remember the programmer was already started coding the game, and apparently it already ran. The game was supposed to be something akin to Konami's arcade Asterix game. Seeing Asterix and the subject matter of Franko in the same sentence is kind of shocking.
Modern gritty reboots for you.
Modern gritty Asterix, even more racist than before. Unfortunately, we switched publisher, and Franko 2 was our primary project at the time. Thus, Kaiko and Coco's were put on hold. And somehow I remember the pronunciation throughout the entire paragraph.
Good job.
Was the PC port of Domon ever planed? If so, why didn't it came out? I don't recall Domon being released ever considered for the PC. Are you happy with how Franko PC port came out? Please say no. Frankly, I didn't play it that well. I wasn't fond of the enhanced graphics loading. I know that something was even missing compared to the Amiga version loading. So, no, I was not impressed. Who did the additional graphics for the PC port of Franko?
Yeah, you know, guys, I think if there's anything he may be thinking of when it comes to what he felt it was missing for the PC port, remember when he brought up the way the stages were made of, like not tired graphics, just where, you know, the single large bitmap. Because, well, the PC port actually did went for the tired graphics approach, except that it also doesn't have that much detail compared to the Amiga game. So the stages in the PC port were more blander. But yeah.
That's troubling to hear.
So yeah, moving on.
Who did the additional graphics for the PC port of Franko that wasn't in the Amiga version? Like a new introduction sequence. There was a new intro on the PC. I'm not sure who did the graphics, I can only imagine.
I can't believe I just misspelled introduction.
I don't know, introduction sounds like it could be a word.
Silly me sometimes.
Unlike a Mugen character, you have to like write intro state as like state 191 introduction.
I might as well just skip this mission, as well missions in this game can be skipped anyway. And move on with the interview.
On what hardware were you developing Domon? Initially, we were doing the game on the Amiga 500s. Then we added in the hard drive and the additional 2 megabytes of memory. As far as I know, the final work on the game was done on the Amiga 1200s with hard drives and extra memory. Out of curiosity, has your significant other seen Franko or Domon? Lots of people saw these games. Women, or at least those I met, are generally indifferent to video games. Were your parents proud with Franko or Domon? I think that maybe not with the games themselves, but more with the impact they had. Not every parent has a kid who does something that sells and gets mentioned in the press. I'd guess in that aspect they were proud. Now, Billy, would you stop sitting on the Amiga? Can you tell me something about the history of Draghi and Kroko? Personally, I don't remember much. I remember, though... we thought about doing something completely different. Something kiddie but playable at the same time. I'll admit that I really like the game. It was also a test for a new guy in the company.
Jalek Subert.
Starzejesz się. Uważaj, bo...
It's over, Jalek Subert. The Black Dragon died with Kano. Never! You're so gay! Why wasn't Draghi and Coco released? Draghi and Kroko was even produced. They even packed at least 1,000 copies, but they were shipped to stores as our new publisher didn't know much what to do. They never released games before, therefore I think they couldn't cut it. That fucking sucks! They actually made copies of the game with that expense, and they never got out and sold. That is the biggest bullshit I have read. Holy fuck, this is Thrill Kill all over again. Another big reason is that the owner of the company also had a number of other companies that didn't do well, and he was focusing on salvaging the companies rather than on releasing games. Holy shit. What was the reason you stopped working with Mirage? Whatever it usually happens, we felt Mirage grew too much for us. I don't have any further comments on that matter. I'll say, though, that in these days, Mirage was the only Polish publisher that ever cared for us. The other companies didn't even respond to our letters, not knowing what we have in the bag. I'm pretty sure they spat themselves in the face. No, they didn't. How did World Software break up and why? Not gonna lie, financial concerns had a lot to do with it. Keep in mind, it was the mid-90s, and legit games were still a rarity. Sure, for the days, we outdid most other Polish Amiga games in sales, but that wasn't enough to keep doing it. When it comes to me, however, I still would have carried on, as I had great plans and ideas that would have come to fruition under World Software brand. However, when it came out the way it did, there's a lot to be said on the matter, but ultimately, burnout could have also been quite a factor. Do you still have an Amiga? No, I sold mine in 2001 for 100 PLN. 26 US dollars? I don't like things I don't use anymore. Maybe I should have mentioned that, but oddly enough, I don't feel that much on this computer. Maybe because I spent a lot of time in it, I'm not sure. As for the old computers, I still have my ZX Spectrum 48, which I would never sell, as I feel most about it. Wow, I can't believe he was able to, only get $26 for an Amiga. Do you still do graphics? Yes. Maybe you would share something with the readers of the Polish Amiga portal.